byliśmy przygotowani na tę ewentualność. Coraz więcej sygnałów.
The U.S.-Israel conflict with Iran is escalating, with Tehran threatening to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed and global oil prices surging. Meanwhile, Washington has issued a temporary sanctions waiver on Russian oil, raising concerns about the impact on Ukraine and Russian revenues. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by my guest, Michael Carpenter, Senior Fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Michael, so glad to have you here with us on World News tonight here on TVP World. Let me get straight into it. So now we're heading into 3 weeks into this U.S.-Israel war waged on Iran. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. What options does the West realistically actually have to reopen it?
Well, it's going to be extremely difficult, and it's going to take additional U.S. force posture in the region to be able to keep the strait, or to rather reopen the strait and keep traffic moving as it was prior to the onset of this war. Iran has a capability of laying mines in those waters, and it doesn't just rely on large vessels, it can rely on small vessels as well, which means that the U.S. would have to have the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities overhead to spot all of those mines that are being laid and to remove them, and then to eliminate the capabilities, in other words, the ships that are responsible for laying those mines. I don't know, the administration could potentially be even contemplating the possibility of deploying ground forces to strategic locations such as Karg Island in the Persian Gulf, to try to ensure that traffic is able to flow freely. But there remain a host of other threats in the region, including the dog that hasn't barked so far, which is the Houthis, who are Iranian proxies and have harassed shipping in the past and could do so again in the future. So again, it looks like the administration walked into this war without having fully thought through the second and third order consequences of their actions, and without a real plan for dealing with some of those consequences that we're seeing today.
Michael, that's exactly my next question that I do want to ask you. So do you think now that the Trump administration really underestimated Iran's, I won't say power, but one of the things of willingness to actually close the Strait of Hormuz, to be able to carry out all these attacks on the Gulf regions? Israel is also being attacked at the same time, the closest ally to the United States. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, clearly they did misunderstand what the reaction from Iran would be, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think generally speaking, this operation came in the aftermath of President Trump riding high on his operation in Venezuela to remove Nicolas Maduro. That was a surgical special operations force maneuver that was highly successful. And I think Trump likely thought that he could do something similar in Iran without judging the completely different context. And then the other piece to this is that following the operation last summer, Operation Midnight Hammer in June of 2025, the retaliation from Iran was rather limited. In fact, it was sort of pro forma retaliation in which the two sides essentially agreed to de-escalate after 12 days of war. Perhaps President Trump thought that the reaction would be similar this time, although surely, Iran experts could have told him that having suffered a second strike in less than a year, Iran would this time seek to exact more revenge, particularly after the killing of its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And so now you're seeing that retribution playing out, and it's rather far-reaching, certainly more far-reaching than the administration, at least initially, judged. And now we're seeing the administration scrambling to deal with those consequences.
All right, so now one of these consequences, of course, let's talk about the hike in oil prices, right? Globally, right? Now, the U.S., what we know latest, and so far because of all of this, has issued temporary sanction waivers, allowing countries to buy Russian oil, right? Now, don't you think that this actually risks undermining Western sanctions on Russia and indirectly funding its war in Ukraine?
Absolutely. This is a huge benefit. Russia is by far the greatest beneficiary of this war against Iran. And now not only is their oil potentially being sold to buyers around the world, but at a markedly increased price due to the spike in global oil prices. So Russia is making a windfall profit right now. And the U.S., of course, imposed those sanctions when there was plenty of slack in global oil markets, and now jeopardizes all of the gains that those sanctions could have achieved in the span of only a few days as Russia really cashes in on this new opportunity. So this is really unhelpful in the Ukraine context. It's more than unhelpful. It's very hurtful for Ukraine and gives Russia the revenues needed to continue to prosecute the war against Ukraine. And again, it's one of these consequences that the administration should have been able to foresee before launching this war against Iran, which was a war of choice, of course.
War of choice, but do you think he may have been pressured a little bit too much by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Clearly, Prime Minister Netanyahu had a huge influence on President Trump's thinking and perhaps oversold how easy this operation might be. Of course, I don't know what was said in those private meetings between the two leaders, but the initial days of the war were highly successful with the removal of Khamenei. But then as the war dragged on and with the various different rationales being given for launching this operation, from regime change to undermining Iran's military capabilities, its missiles and drones, to retribution, to eliminating the nuclear program, we never quite knew what the strategic goal was. And I think for Netanyahu, it is regime change. But President Trump may have been sold on something else. And we won't know because he hasn't really articulated to the American people a clear and well-stated rationale for launching this invasion, or rather this attack.
Michael, I want to ask you really briefly, do you think that, how soon, I know it's a difficult question to possibly answer, how soon do you think we can see an end to the war here in Iran? And also, if you can just comment about what you think, the fact that, I assume to Ukraine's advantage, the fact that Zelensky sent a team of military experts to the Middle East, right? Hoping that they would get, U.S. weapons in return.
Yeah, in the early days of this war, it would have been foreseeable that the president could simply declare mission accomplished and walk away at any time. Now that there's been more widespread escalation against our partners in the Gulf, and now that there have been U.S. casualties as well, I think it's harder for the president to walk away, which is precisely the sort of escalatory risk that leaders often find themselves faced with when they enter into these conflicts without a clear strategic goal and without a clear sense of when they're going to walk away. So we're in that escalatory spiral right now, and so it's very hard to predict whether the president will try to extricate himself from this conflict in the coming days, or whether he's going to continue to try to degrade Iran's military capabilities for perhaps another couple of weeks. You're right. When it comes to President Zelensky in Ukraine, they've benefited from being able to provide their drone and counter-drone expertise to a number of Gulf partners. I don't think that fully compensates for the additional revenue that Russia is going to be able to deploy as a result of the lifting of those oil sanctions, however.
All right, Michael, and just very briefly, I just want to switch gear here for a moment and talk about the latest topic that's been that's ignited quite a debate here in Poland. Well, President Nawrocki argues, and we're talking about the EU Defense Loan Safe program, Nawrocki argues that Poland shouldn't tie its security to decisions made in Brussels. He's proposed financing rearmament through central bank reserves, instead what he calls, a sovereign alternative. Now, U.S. Ambassador Tom Rose has also raised concerns that SAFE effectively discriminates against American defense products. As someone who's watched this from the inside, where does legitimate concern end and domestic political convenience begin, very briefly?
Well, it's difficult for me to get involved in a domestic political debate within Poland. The SAFE mechanism is a mechanism for providing loans to European countries that want to boost their defense industrial base. So to that extent, I think it's a worthwhile mechanism. Of course, it's for individual countries to decide whether they want to avail themselves of those loans or seek additional sources of financing from other parties, including from their own central banks. So that's a debate for Polish politicians to have. But I would say overall, the SAFE mechanism has brought badly needed financing to European defense industry as it struggles now to try to catch up for decades of lack of capacity.
Thank you so much, Michael Carpenter, Senior Fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, for all your expert analysis here on TVP World. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya, and stay tuned with us for more news and exclusive interviews.